The day my daughter-in-law spat in my face was the day I finally understood what my late father meant when he told me, "Gerald, the most dangerous thing a man can do is confuse generosity with weakness." I was 63 years old, standing in the kitchen of a house I had paid for in cash, and I watched my son Marcus do absolutely nothing. I built everything from nothing. That's not a boast, it's a foundation. It's important you understand where I came from before you understand what I did, because without context, a man's actions can look cruel when they are actually just the final chapter of a very long story that someone else started. My name is Gerald Whitmore. I grew up in a two-bedroom apartment in Baltimore with my father, my mother, and 3 brothers. My father worked at a steel fabrication plant for 31 years and never once complained about it. He came home smelling like iron and ambition. He told me that the smell of hard work was the only cologne a man ever needed. I believed him. I got into construction in my mid-20s with a used pickup truck, a set of tools I'd bought piece by piece from a pawn shop, and a reputation for showing up on time and finishing what I started. By the time I was 40, I had a company with 14 full-time employees. By 50, I had 40 employees, 3 commercial contracts with the county, and a portfolio of 6 rental properties. I wasn't a millionaire in the flashy sense. I was wealthy in the quiet, sturdy way that takes decades to build and looks invisible until someone tries to take it from you. My son Marcus was my pride. When his mother, Diana, passed from cancer 11 years ago, it was just the 2 of us. I raised that boy through his grief and mine simultaneously. I coached his baseball team. I helped him with his college applications. I co-signed his first car loan, not because I had to, but because I wanted him to understand that credit was a tool and not a trap. When Marcus graduated from university with a degree in business administration, I cried in the parking lot where he couldn't see me. I am not ashamed of that. Then he met Priya. I want to be fair, I genuinely tried. Priya was sharp, well-spoken, and came from a family with money of their own, which I respected. I never thought of her as a threat. I thought of her as an addition, a daughter-in-law. I attended their wedding with a full heart and an open wallet. The rehearsal dinner alone cost me $40,000 because they wanted a venue downtown with a rooftop view of the city. I paid it without complaint. The house came 2 years into their marriage. Marcus and Priya were renting an apartment that they both described as beneath them, which was a phrase I noticed but let slide. Marcus came to me one evening and asked if I'd help them purchase a home. He explained that the market was competitive, that they needed a large down payment to make their offer competitive, and that he would pay me back over time. What he didn't mention, and what I discovered later, was that Priya had specifically told him to approach me rather than her own parents because, in her words, "Your dad is easier." I purchased the house outright, $420,000, a 4-bedroom colonial in a good school district with a big backyard and a renovated kitchen. I put it in Marcus's name as a gift because I believed in him and because I believed they were building something together. I didn't draw up a contract. I didn't hire a lawyer. I handed him the keys at Christmas with a card that said, simply, "This is yours, take care of it." The first year was fine. The second year, things began to shift. Priya started making small comments at family gatherings, remarks about my Dacre being dated, observations about my opinions that were framed as jokes but landed like verdicts. I chalked it up to personality differences. I am a direct man. She was a direct woman. I told myself that directness, even when it stings, is something I could respect. The third year, Marcus stopped calling as often. I noticed it the way you notice the temperature dropping in autumn gradually and then all at once. Our Sunday phone calls became bi-weekly, then monthly. When I invited them for Thanksgiving, Priya said they had plans with her family, which was fine, except Marcus hadn't told me himself. I found out through a text. I let it go. I let it go because I love my son and because I had watched enough fathers destroy their relationships with their children by making their children feel caught between 2 loyalties. I refused to be that man. I stayed quiet. I stayed available. I kept showing up. Then came the afternoon in March. Marcus had called me the week before asking if I could come over to look at a problem with the basement waterproofing. Classic Marcus, never asking his father over just to visit, but always having a reason that felt transactional. I showed up on a Wednesday afternoon with my truck and my tools, the same way I'd always shown up for him. I knocked. Priya answered the door. I don't know what had happened that day before I arrived. I don't know what conversation she and Marcus had, or what mood she was in, or what I inadvertently walked into the middle of. What I know is that within 4 minutes of me stepping through the door and asking a simple question about the scope of the waterproofing issue, Priya looked at me with a contempt I had never seen on another human face directed at me, not in 63 years of living, and she told me that she was tired of me acting like I owned the place. I told her calmly that I had in fact purchased the place. That was when she spat at me. Not a metaphor, not a figure of speech. She looked me in the eye and spat at my face. The room went silent. I felt it land on my cheek. I stood completely still, and I turned, slowly, the way a man turns when he is using every ounce of discipline he possesses to stay composed, and I looked at my son. Marcus was standing in the doorway to the kitchen. He had seen everything. He stood there for a long moment, and then he looked down at the floor. He looked at the floor. That silence, his silence, was the thing that broke something in me, not his wife's cruelty, because I had already accepted that she did not love me. But my son's silence told me something I had spent 3 years refusing to believe. It told me that I had confused generosity with ownership, and that somewhere along the way, the house I had given had become a place where I was not welcome, and Marcus had decided that was acceptable. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. I said very quietly, "I'll be in touch." I drove home. I called my attorney, Richard Haynes, who had handled my business contracts for over 2 decades. I explained the situation. I explained that the house had been transferred to Marcus as a gift with no formal documentation beyond the deed, but that I had retained records of every wire transfer, every payment, and every communication related to the purchase. Richard told me something important. In our state, a gift of real property is extremely difficult to reclaim under normal circumstances. However, he also told me that if I had never formally relinquished a financial claim, if the transfer had been made under conditions that could be interpreted as a loan rather than an unconditional gift, there were avenues worth exploring. We explored them. It took 4 months, a paper trail that I had kept out of professional habit rather than suspicion, and 3 meetings with mediators before Marcus accepted the reality of the situation. He hired his own attorney. There were difficult conversations. There were phone calls where voices were raised and things were said that I will not repeat here. In the end, Marcus signed the house back over to me in exchange for my agreement not to pursue further legal action and to forgive a separate personal loan of $18,000 I had given them quietly 2 years prior. He and Priya moved into a rental apartment. I was told by mutual family members that Priya was furious. I understood that. Fury is what happens when consequences arrive. I did not feel victorious. I want to be clear about that. There was no celebration, no sense of satisfaction. I drove to that house alone on the evening the deed was returned to my name, and I sat in the driveway for a long time looking at the front door, the same door I had stood at with keys in my hand on a Christmas morning, so certain that I was building something that would outlast me. My father was right. Generosity is not weakness, but it requires discernment. It requires the wisdom to know the difference between someone who receives a gift with gratitude and someone who receives it as confirmation that they can take whatever they want from you. I still love my son. I am still waiting for the call where he tells me he understands why I did what I did, not because I need to be right, but because I miss him. I miss the boy who used to sit in the passenger seat of my pickup truck and ask me questions about everything. I miss the man I believed he was becoming. The house is currently rented to a young couple expecting their first child. They call me Mr. Whitmore, and they always pay on time. Some things, at least, are exactly as they should be.